are. Culture Chat, September 17th. Um, Whichever of you find people from the Interchange Institute, just hit record. Thank you. And everybody, of course, adjust your video, audio as you need to based on that recording. Upcoming events of the Interchange Institute: Crossing Cultures with Competence, Level 1, October 9th to 10th, in person, Detroit. As an alum of this program, I did it online. It was fantastic, incredible materials. I'm just going to say, having participated in many professional development experiences, certifications of one kind and another, um, maybe the best put together packet of materials, both for learning in the time together, as well as things to go and use in your own work. It's a really rich experience. For more information, reach out to anybody marked Interchange Institute here. Terry especially might be able to give some information about that. Culture Chat schedule. You're obviously here. That's awesome. But October 1st, the 15th, 29th, November 12th, we're just going to keep going every other week for a while. So please do mark your calendar and come on in. Make sure you're getting those emails. If you're not getting emails about this already, please let us know. We'll send you the link every other week. October 1st, submission deadline for the Intercultural Training Expertise Certification. Some people have just gone through it. They're pumped about it. They're putting it on LinkedIn. They're sharing it with potential clients and employers. That could be you. So info at interchangeinstitute.org for more info. And finally, culture chat topics. We are all over this word map. Culture knowledge, the career itself, language, just a good time, just connecting as interculturalists and global citizens, or getting really didactic and sharing skills and knowledge. We do it all here, and we'd love to have you help lead one of those conversations. Please send a message or an email if you'd like to do that. Today's topic, we're using the intercultural development continuum and intercultural coaching. That's what we're talking about. And we're quickly going to introduce that continuum, that model. We'll talk a bit about how we use that model and how you might use this model and other developmental models or other models altogether in your intercultural training. But first, who are we? We are Summer Eglinski.
Hi, I'm Summer Eglinski. I am an intercultural program manager at SERVA, but a lot of my background is in higher education. Worked in international education for about 16 years, working with students, faculty, and staff at several institutions in the US. And I also was able to, as you'll see later too, use the IDI in some of that work that I did in international education.
That's awesome. I'm Nick. I'm a culture consultant who's likewise used the IDI, the Intercultural Development Inventory, and the underlying theory in a lot of work, both at the University of Illinois with faculty, staff, and student leaders, as well as in corporate and other consulting. So um, enough about us, or at least for now. There's more to tell, but we want to put this intercultural development continuum right in the spotlight with a poll. How familiar are you with this idea of the intercultural development continuum, or the inventory that assesses one's place on that continuum? To what extent do you incorporate as well personality typing? Curious if you take into account personality as well as cultural development in your work. So I am going to launch a poll. And the good news is with this poll, there are some "what are you even talking about" options. So uh, is everybody seeing a poll launched? I'm seeing the question's kind of long, so it might take a while to get into it.
No.
We're not seeing a poll.
Not
No.
yet.
No.
There it
Yeah.
is.
I just
Well,
launched
somebody's
it.
launched it.
Oh, it's the.
Oh, thank you so much. All right. And we're seeing responses. Thank you. While you're responding, speaking of bragging, some people are joining from Santa Barbara, California. Look at you all. I'm only talking over about 5 of you as you continue to try to fill out the poll. Um, so I'll take this moment to say, if you want to add something or ask questions about it, do that in the chat. Appreciate the Alex. Yeah, among other things, Big Five, MBTI or Enneagram or some kind of color scheme, Harry Potter, Hogwarts house, um, whichever kinds of personality assessments you might imagine there. We're seeing 26 of 30 participants in, and I think that might account, maybe that for our folks in cars or um, Hermann brain dominance instrument. Curtis, at some point in the second half of this, I'd love to hear more about that one. I know that a little bit, but not a lot, and I've liked what I've seen. 26 of 30. I'm going to go ahead and let's see. We're going to stop sharing that poll. Or sorry, are we seeing the results, y'all?
Yes.
You are seeing the results. Thanks, Ed. Yeah. Oh, yeah, great. So some of us are using the IDI in our work. There's three of us. That's fantastic. We're familiar with it, heard of it, never heard of it. Six, yes. Um, you get to you get to learn about that today. To what extent do you incorporate personality typing? Always, sometimes, never. 10, 6, 10, and 10. That is so interesting. For those who had the always or sometimes, if you could just put in the chat, what are you using there? We'll talk about that in the second half, but I just want to get that information. Um, and as you can imagine, one of the purposes of a poll like this is just to get a sense of how much detail we'll need to go into, get a sense of a baseline, and of course, obviously, a pre-post. We might be able to say at the end, "Hey, well, everybody does know." You would answer that first one differently, at least, or maybe some motivational thing. Maybe there's a bit of a motivational or behavioral outcome to that second one. Perhaps we might start using it, or stop. Yeah, Myers-Briggs. It can be subjective. I love that. The language of Myers-Briggs or the categories might help. If I understand you correctly, Kathy, that's maybe how I'd put that, but I wonder if you'd put that differently. Feel free to put it in the chat. Maybe not prior to training, but I'm referencing it constantly and checking with people. I love that. We're going to talk about formal and informal use
Mhm.
of models. I love it. Ooh, conflict dynamics. 16, I believe the 16 is
TNP is
Myers-Briggs.
basically the same as MBTI, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Yeah. Disc, love disc. My own insights. Yes, absolutely. Is my own insights the name of a personality typing thing, or are you just saying it's your own insights?
Ah, her own.
Yeah, heck yeah, that's awesome. That's good. You are the personality typing system. Love it. Summer, did you have any thoughts about the poll, or shall we just launch?
Well, I will say one person asked it, how DMIS was related, and we'll
Yeah.
get to that in a minute, but they're very, very closely related to the IDC. So you're on the right track with that.
The country navigator. Yes, I was asking about that. Perfect. Love it. All right. Well, thanks, Joe. That gives us a bit of a sense of where to go with the IDI discussion. Um, we noted our experience a little bit using it and where we've used it and a little bit of how. But Summer, where have you found yourself mostly using the IDI and what impact has that made?
Right. When I've primarily used it in a formal setting in terms of really giving the assessment to people, it has been in a higher education setting. I didn't do at the institution I was at, I didn't do like a pre and post test, that which is something that you referenced a minute ago. It was more sort of a baseline, right, to understand kind of where people were to give them some context. Or I actually came in with a group from Pennsylvania and did some debriefs for a group that had done it previously, and then we're doing it again, which resulted in some really interesting results because some large significant events had happened in the interim. And so people got some results that surprised them. And so it was very interesting to kind of walk through that. So, but all of it has been, the formal stuff has been in higher education, but it's something that I utilize kind of informally, I think, in a lot of other ways. And so I think, some people said, yeah, I reference it. And that's something that I would say that I do too, without it necessarily being super formal also.
Awesome. Yeah. Uh, Similar. It's for me. It's been in educational settings, professional settings. I don't know. There's always a huge difference there. faculty, staff, and student leaders at the University of Illinois. Also, classroom teachers. Quite interestingly, some elementary school teachers in Charlotte, North Carolina, but also corporate, nonprofit, and government clients. It turns out to be somewhat helpful. Not somewhat, more than somewhat helpful, very helpful across a lot of different settings. The continuum itself, I mean, this is the kind of the point of the first half of this. What is this continuum, and what can it do for us as interculturalists? Um, Summer, maybe I'll just take the monocultural mindsets, and you take the intercultural.
Sure.
The intercultural development continuum uh, comes out of the work of Milton Bennett and others, but particularly Milton Bennett, the developmental model of intercultural sensitivity. You might ask the question, how does someone become interculturally sensitive or interculturally sophisticated or competent or whatever word you want to use there? Cultural humility, you might say. How do they become an interculturalist? Might be one way to put it. And the answer is, well, not just by being smart or making a decision on a day or going to a workshop, but by normal human development processes, by encountering the world using the tools and orientations we already have, encountering both success and maybe shortcomings or barriers, maybe having kind of a cognitive dissonance that knowing that something more is going on with culture than we're currently getting, and then and shifting our mindset to make more sense of what we're experiencing. So it's a developmental model, replacing earlier orientations with later ones. It starts with denial. I'd say we all start in ignorance of cultural difference, but once we start encountering some, if we keep on saying culture doesn't matter or I don't want to engage with cultural difference, we call that denial. Most folks give way pretty easily to polarization. Developmentally progressing along this orientation continuum means moving into polarizing, judging difference, us them thinking, good, bad, in out thinking. That's a little surprising to some folks, but we are engaging more deeply with culture then. That often, for almost every, 85% of people who've taken the IDI would actually have already moved beyond this to minimization. And that's where we find most people is in this transitional phase between an ethnocentric monocultural mindset um, and a multicultural mindset. They say, I'm tolerant of cultural differences. And the way I tolerate being in the context of a lot of difference or me showing up as different in the eyes of others is to de-emphasize the difference, minimizing our experience of cultural difference. And a lot of organizations are there. Two-thirds of people that take the IDI, a little more than two-thirds, find themselves there. And that kind of means that the average result of a large group of people is almost always going to fall in minimization. Not almost always, but very likely to. And we this bears out um, in our experience. Is it true that most Americans who took this test showed up in minimization? Most people who've ever taken the test anywhere show up in minimization. It's not a plurality; it's actually a straight majority of over 60. I think it's like 65% ish. So it's actually
It's a
the
bell
very
curve.
most
If you
common.
look at the overall results in
Yeah,
general,
yeah,
there's this curve and the hump in the middle is minimization. So comparatively few are outside of that by comparison.
yeah. And Kathy makes a very good point. It covers a large span, and part of the
Mhm.
reason it does is that the developmental work of resolving a need to deny cultural difference or resolving the coping strategy of just doing an us them, good, bad, polarizing, takes time. It takes a lot of time, and there's actually a lot of developmental elements going on, and so it does cover a large span, both of ways of thinking as well as ways of behaving and ways of speaking about difference. And then minimization for a lot of people, at least 15% of the people that take the IDI, will give way to what we call acceptance. Summer, tell us about that, please.
I will, but I did want to jump back very
Oh, yeah,
briefly. One of
sure.
my, I don't know, I guess it's a point of fascination for me for polarization. When we talk about that kind of us them mentality, you
Yeah.
can also get reversal within that, which
Mm,
means, someone might go to a new place and they're like, everything about this is better than where I came from. It's still an us them dichotomy,
mhm,
but you flipped it on your head and you're like, everything about that new place is better than my old place. And so I
yeah,
think you can see this, in fact, sometimes with like study abroad programs and things like that, where students go into a new, exciting environment and they're like, well, I will now be French. And I will, embrace every French stereotype and everything about my home country is terrible, right? But it's the same thought process but turned on its head just a little bit. And it can feel like that person, or that person may feel especially like they've really progressed significantly, but they're still kind of stuck in that us them mentality. And I think the
Yeah.
other thing to understand too about minimization that again kind of fascinates me, I guess, a lot of times you can sort of typify a number of these by kind of common remarks. And for minimization, one of the remarks you might hear is, well, I don't see X. I don't see difference, or I don't see color, or I don't see, and you can kind of fill in the blank with that I don't see phrasing. But with that idea that I don't see it, people are still actually operating through the lens of their own biases. And so when you say that, I don't see this difference, it means that you're still operating with the lenses that are familiar to you. And that's where you still end up kind of de-emphasizing those differences because you're still operating within your kind of known structure. When someone progresses beyond that stage into acceptance, they've realized that those differences are worth acknowledging, right? That they do in fact see those. They understand those differences and that they are significant and that they are worth acknowledging, but they may not understand how to bridge the gap. So it's a huge step to move on from that kind of minimization to accepting it and appreciating it. But it's another, I think, significant step to understand how to bridge those differences, or how to kind of move back and forth in between them. And so that's where someone reaches that stage of adaptation. Um, the DMIS has a sixth stage. So this is based initially on the DMIS, this whole theoretical concept. There's a final stage in the DMIS, which, and now it's completely going out of my head. But basically, integration is what it is. It's integration. And the idea is that you can absolutely 100% seamlessly go back and forth. And in that theory, they said, Bennett, I believe, says you can't, very few people are going to reach this stage, which I believe is why Milton Hammer, is that the right name?
Mitch.
Mitch
Mitch
Hammer.
Hammer? Yeah.
Um, my brain has just, it's like 7:22 in the
Michael
morning.
Page, Mitch Hammer, Mick
There's too
Vandenberg,
many of them.
Milton Bennett. Yeah. Yeah,
Why
yeah, it happens
haven't
to all of
we
us.
chopped off that last stage and said, okay, adaptation is really kind of where we're heading to, because so few people are going to make it to that final stage of integration, that we're going to focus on adaptation and allowing people to be able to bridge those gaps, but understanding that there's always more to learn when it comes to culture. So I find this continuum really fascinating. I can see myself in it. I can see myself progressing in it. I can see myself sometimes, almost mentally going back and having to walk myself through some of those pieces. Depending on what's going on in my world. So there's a lot that goes on with this, and happy to answer questions, but that's kind of the very brief description of it. I would also say if anyone wants to either look this up while we're talking, because we will be going into breakout rooms soon, or take a quick picture of this continuum just so you can reference it in that breakout room more easily.
Thank you, Summer. Yeah, yeah. So why would we use this? I'm going to go back to the continuum in a second. I just want to say all this. So get ready with your screenshot or your phone or however you want to do a picture if you want to do that. But intercultural development continuum, what can we do with it? We can establish an individual or a group baseline. Um, that could just be helpful. We can kind of help people activate the prior schema they have about culture. It can be part of that conversation. It can be um, a way to start doing a little cognitive dissonance, saying, hey, putting a little bit of that cognitive dissonance in there as a learning tool that says, hey, we think we're engaging at a higher level of cultural engagement, but actually we might not be. So it might give us a place to go developmentally. It might tell us, hey, what's next for this group? And that can feed into curriculum or program development. This is really big, to say, hey, if an organization is really in that polarization mode, either because that's the overarching orientation of the group, or that seems to be characterizing their interactions in that group, that their internal culture is very polarizing, or just they're in a moment of great polarization. It might be the case, paradoxically, that we want to emphasize cultural similarity instead of digging into the differences. Tactically, temporarily, as a stepping stone. But that might be more appropriate than challenging them in that moment with cultural differences that they're going to feed into a polarization mindset. Um, or if someone comes along and says, hey, we're actually all in acceptance, if the assessment shows that, or our engagement shows they're all in the acceptance range, well, shoot. Um, if they're all in deeply comprehending difference and they're having those conversations and they're doing the self understanding work and the other understanding work and conversation, then maybe we can move quickly to adaptation strategies without maybe relaying all that groundwork. So, and of course, that's very motivational for some people to be met at their point of development and their developmental opportunity, their zone of proximal development, not their zone of boredom, because
Mhm.
we're retracing old things that they've experienced before. Hopefully, I'm not doing that to you too much right now. But the and of course I mentioned on the previous on that the next slide. This is here just so you can review the continuum and take pictures. But managing expectations, this is huge. I think a lot of folks, especially in group settings, some people will have different levels of readiness, and they're going to be ready to go hard, go fast, deep into cultural differences. They live there. That's fine for them. For other people, this might be a way to have a conversation about code switching or masking or filtering themselves. They might be saying, they might find themselves in minimization, saying, "Hey, I'm minimizing your experience of me as different because I don't want to be pushed out or pushed down or thought or exoticized or othered in this space." So this could be really powerful for managing expectations. And I've used it specifically for that, letting people know, hey, you're an adaptation on this assessment. We're going to talk about minimization a lot. And just understand you might have a different role and a different goal in all of this than some of the other people in the room. Not naming names, we're not breaking confidentiality. The ultimate, of course, is pre-post intervention assessment, maybe a study abroad course, a series of trainings or other encounters. A college education. They were using this in some schools as just saying all undergrads take this as freshmen and seniors, or as first years and in their final years, if you will. Um, this never happens in the real world, for what it's worth. Almost never happens. Pre-post is so hard to get people to pay for, sign up for. It's risky because it might show people are concerned. It might show backwards progress. And I call it that for a reason. More on that if you want to know why I call it backwards progress instead of regress. Um, yeah. You're crushing it, Renata. Thank you. Um, so in a breakout room, we're curious, what do you see in your work? Are you encountering people very, very specifically? Thank you, Renata. Are you encountering people in ethnocentrism that you're helping move into ethno-relativism or multiculturalism? Are you encountering a lot of people who are already in that ethno-relative space and then taking them deeper or challenging them in other ways or having them join you as a developer of other people's cultural competence? Where do you want them to be moving on this continuum? Are there activities or training experiences or immersive experiences or whatever you provide? Talk to each other about that. So these are the questions. Feel free to snap those real quick or write those down. But in a breakout, introduce yourself briefly. Feel free to come back to the main room to be assigned. This is also a networking and a mixing kind of place, and there's no shame or no worries if you want to do that. Um, where would you want your clients moving to? And then come back in about 8 minutes, ready to discuss this. Questions for me about those questions or Summer? Not seeing any. I will now try and get those breakouts. Welcome back, everybody. What are you encountering? Feel free to put that in the chat. Feel free to use the raise hand function or just jump on the mic. We're pretty open to all kinds of participation.
Can I ask just a basic question? This assessment, is it in writing? Is it like the Myers-Briggs? How is it? Because I've never seen this. So
Yeah. You work with someone like Nick or I, for example, an IDI qualified administrator who will send you the assessment. And yeah, it's very similar to the Myers-Briggs in terms of, just answering a whole bunch of questions, and then you get a result from that. But yeah, what's some of your feedback in terms of, oh, I think, no, that was my mouse. I got excited. I thought someone was raising their hand and it turned out to be my own mouse. Uh, how are you all using this or similar types of things in the work that you're doing? Said, yeah, we can help you find out who to contact.
See you, Annette. What's up?
Sure, no, just sharing. It doesn't seem there's many hands going up, so I'll put mine up. Um, how do I use it? So, not the instrument in full itself. I qualified in it, was amongst the first cohort in Tokyo back in the day to qualify in it when Milton Bennett and Michael Page came over. Janet Bennett also came over for some others. And it was a really fantastic opportunity to actually be debriefed by Bennett, the man himself, as it were.
Yeah.
But in the interim, it's become so popular. And I particularly like your framing of that instrument as well, the graphic that you guys designed for it today. And there's so many different versions that appear on a lot of the decks that I work with. I work with a lot of the intercultural global relocation companies, as well as it's coming in a little bit to the executive coaching work that I do. So basically, we show the model just as you did today, reflect on what is each stage, and then ask the question back without having done the instrument. Just where do you think you are on this? And then talk about the goal. Okay, you've got 2 years, you've got a 5-year assignment. What are your hopes? Where would you like to see you get to yourself? How about your team? What are some strategies to get there? And then we can slip into coaching mode, or we can stay in a little bit more trainer mode. So that's pretty much how we work with the companies I'm working with. Back to you.
Thank you. I do have a question for those of you who work with these sorts of things. Do you find that people want to sort of actively progress along a developmental process or continuum, or that people just sort of want the enlightenment visited upon them from the outside? I can see a lot of people who would just sort of think that it's going to appear. I think that's an easy thing for human beings to want. But I'm curious if you encounter a lot of people who are eager to develop, or kind of how they feel about that. Renata.
Yeah, I think with this scale, it's pretty similar to our general conception of culture. Like we sometimes say, it's like fish in water. I sometimes feel like people don't even know what that scale means. And even if you put them on the scale, it's so meaningless to them because they're in their own mindset. This is where they are. And they often believe they're further to the right of the scale than they really are. That's my experience. So if you show them the words and if you explain what the stages mean, they would all say, "Oh, I'm an acceptance or I'm an adaptation." I've actually had clients who said, "Oh, I'm fully integrated," and they were absolutely not fully integrated. So I think it's I think they often don't know where they are and what they want. Um, but I often also feel that when they say, "Oh, I'm fully adapted," it means I'm okay with where I'm now. I feel comfortable. So I feel like somebody can be at minimization stage and be very comfortable with life. And that's why they believe they're in integration stage. And so this is why I'm saying it's a bit like the fish in water story where they don't really know what we're talking about or what else is out there and what that next stage actually means. And do I really need to reach it to be happier and more successful? Maybe I'm perfect where I am today. That's often where we discuss what we can achieve or where people want to be.
Yeah, thank you.
Keep things
Alex.
coming in the chat. Just wanted to say we have time for Alex. Sorry, Summer, what were you saying?
No, go ahead. Keep going. We have time for Alex, so we'll do Alex, and then we have another brief breakout room.
Labor.
Cool. Yeah. The question is about people seeking development, and I noticed in a corporate environment, on some of the IDIs I've done, people are like, "What do I got to do? Okay, what's next?" And they're like, really, really
Goal
gunning for it.
oriented. Yeah.
Yeah, and then which is kind of a shock to me coming from a academic environment where it's a bunch of chin scratchers like, well, what does that mean? Say more about that. Let's explore it. Let's go deeper. And so that's been my experience.
That's such an interesting comparison between those two worlds. I love hearing that. Thank you.
Oh, I love that. It makes me think of Kolb's learning cycle. If we're going to be like sort of theoretical, reflective versus active experimenters, observation, and whatever else. So like, I love what you're saying there, Alex. Maybe that's a place to start the conversation with that person, and then you can cycle them back around once that itch is scratched a little bit, or maybe you just live in that weird action oriented. I get that a lot. I get that from people that make like I've had conversations with people who, and I'm not bragging on myself because I don't make $5 million a year, but I talk to people who make $5 million or more a year about their IDI results, and they're just like, "What do I do? I will win. Then I will crush this." I'm like, I'm not sure that's how it works, bud, but it is so interesting to see that action orientation. Let's start the slideshow again. Um, I'm hearing a couple of things and seeing a couple of things in our in the chat and in the conversation that I think is going to make a lot of sense as we come into this next little section. A quick note, formal versus informal use. I would just say some of us are saying we've used these models to inform our own behind the scenes program development, teaching methodology, our own sort of maybe our own assessments. This is certainly in terms of assessments I've put together for learners or modified for learners. I've had the IDI and other models in the back of my head, even as I'm modifying maybe a different approach. Um, and we also want to say, hey, one great way to be adaptive and flexible is to kind of mix or remix some of these. Think about some student development theories, human development theories, or even dimensional approaches to cultural difference, like polychronic versus monochronic time. Summer, I think we're very intent on talking about you like this informal versus formal use, or how to
Yeah.
bring this to a place where they don't want to use the assessment because they have their own
Right.
materials.
Well,
Like, yeah,
yeah, I mean, I think, depending on how you're going about the work that you do in terms of intercultural work, you may be working with a company that has their own proprietary, materials and things like that. And maybe it's not realistic to use something like the IDI formally, but I think understanding these concepts can definitely informally influence that, can give some context and background in terms of just tools and foundational information that either the clients that you're working with can help, they can help understand, it can give them more information to help understand where they are, or just give you that additional layer of context in terms of guiding people through a process. And then I got excited too when Nick and I were talking about this, about, for example, Sanford's challenge and support, which for those of you who have worked in higher ed, that I think is a cornerstone of student development theory. But really, I would argue it's human development theory, because it has to do with, where is that kind of optimal place for growth. And so you can see Nick's put together this great visual here in terms of, how much challenge do you need to grow, how much support do you need. And when you've got higher levels of both challenge and support, that's prime space for growth. But not an insufficient amount of either one of them can result in stagnation, going backwards, or just totally being uninterested. So I think bearing in mind something as simple as that concept of challenge and support when we're guiding people through these can be really beneficial. But this is not the only one. You mentioned Kolb, you mentioned some of these others, and so there's a lot of opportunities out there.
yeah. I would say this is a huge one for me. Thinking about the intercultural development continuum, we want to challenge our clients, our learners, our peers, people we're leading, or just friends, kids. I mean, just we want to challenge our communities wherever we are to grow if we can, in their multiculturalism. That's kind of what we all do. Um, High challenge and high support. Too little challenge with high support leads a lot of people to hang out in that minimization space. I love what you said, Renata, because people feel comfortable, they feel confident or competent. But actually, what we want to see is confidence and competence in cultural adaptation growing together. So the old grand tour model of study abroad or something like that, or all inclusive results, own language tours. There's nothing wrong with these things, all by themselves, as part of someone's overall development or as part of an overall developmental program. But they are pretty high support with low challenge, can lead to overconfidence and kind of a confirmation of what we already know. And of course, high challenge with low support can lead people to run home, to retreat, the stress and apprehension. Someone noted, Sharon, I think you noted, I'd love to hear more at some point about how you think about integration as a place on the continuum can be pretty stressful. But it makes sense to me because that'll be a high challenge, like an all the time high challenge place for them, to always be encountering cultural difference. Um, so maybe more in the chat if you want.
Oh, I wrote a small
Dimensional typing.
dissertation there for you.
What's that?
I wrote a small dissertation there for you.
Oh, you did. Oh
Um,
gosh. Oh, let me scroll up. All right. I'm going to read all that really soon. A quick note. Kathy pointed out, and it was pointed out last culture chat. Hey, maybe polychronic versus monochronic time, as Syed was sharing with us. Maybe these types of cultural dimensions actually affect how we move through the intercultural development continuum or how we encounter cultural development, even if it's not, on this model. And I think that makes a lot of sense. That actually we are thinking about event time or sort of like human interaction time or natural time versus just linearly moving through this model. I think that's very fair to say that in this group or this setting or with these needs or these goals or these activities or this leisure, um, I might be moving through this or accessing skills I have along this continuum at different times and in different ways, and it's not necessarily as linear as some people will make it. I think that's a perfectly fair thing for a client to say and for us to take into account in training design. And of course, I mean, what do we get people doing? What do we do with our extroverts? Extroverts might have more experience across cultural difference without as much education, potentially, not always. They might feel better about being told to go out and make 5 new friends today. I love that stuff. Give me that. I'm a huge extrovert. High openness, low conscientiousness. I'm not going to finish the book you give me. I'm not going to read all the chapters. Um, but maybe there's ways to maybe shore up my learning by intentionally disciplining myself to go read more and get more of that education. So maybe our drive and our particular path through the continuum will look quite different based on some of these dimensional typing. And where it says dimensional typing, you could use Hofstede or Trompenaars or Kolb or just anything, Myers-Briggs. But Summer.
Yes, yes. I mean, I've used a lot of the personality typing in the work that I've done too. It's just another tool in the toolbox when it comes to helping people, I think, both understand themselves, which I think, I think especially Alex, you mentioned, so the more corporate types having this goal mindset and wanting to get from point A to point B. I think sometimes, especially perhaps for that type of personality, it's easy to underappreciate understanding themselves first, giving context to your own self before moving through that process. And so I like using some of these other resources and tools when it comes to that kind of development as well.
Love it. Love it. Gonna read that dissertation soon. Um, okay. Discussion 2. Um, I have, I'll just be honest with you, it was going to be a breakout, but we would not have time to share back out. So, calling it discussion 2. Um, what other models might we use in our work? How might we mix or remix those models? Um, you've mentioned a few of those intercultural ones. Are there, do you want to maybe say a few things about this, not a linear path through the IDC, kind of starting to problematize this very linear, direct, you might even say like a low context or potentially Eurocentric. I don't want to, I'm not necessarily saying that, but some people might, um, approach to the IDC. What are our thoughts about different paths through how personality plays into cultural development, how we program things for our clients or learners?
Yeah, and since we're not going to go into breakouts, feel free to raise your hand, drop a line in the chat, whatever, unmute.
Um, I'm going to answer you, Alan, in the chat, and Kirtik is going to talk to us. You got the mic.
Yeah, we were just discussing it also in our group. I use the global disc. It is not a disc, but it's a combination of culture with disc, and it is made by somebody who worked with Hofstede and so with all the other things. And he missed the culture also always, so he came up with the global disc. I don't know if other people are familiar with it, and that is what I always use.
Love that.
I
Global
haven't heard
disc,
of
yeah.
that one yet, so thank you for sharing that.
Alex has actually spoken to us about the weird concepts. That's quite interesting.
I love that one. Yeah.
Wealthy, educated, uh, or
I can
something,
never remember all of
enlightened.
them. Yeah.
Alex, please, could you enlighten
Western
us?
educated.
Oh,
Something.
sure. Yeah. Western
Romantic.
educated, industrialized, rich democracies. Essentially,
Oh,
it was his work in, he and two other, Joseph Heinrich and two other co-authors just discussed kind of out of the psychology field how what we thought we knew about the human mind is in fact something that we just know about the Westerner mind. And in fact,
hmm.
Westerners are somewhat particular due to their own historical background. And that was something that I was learning because I was at the University of Minnesota. I was applying a lot of Dick Nisbet's kind of East Asian versus Westerner notions, and then I found, well, this kind of relates to my students from Africa and the Middle East as well. And then I realized, oh, wait a minute, it's us that are the weird ones. It's
Yes.
everybody else has more of a collective orientation. And
Yeah.
so, um, yeah, that's how I came to that.
That was finding that theory was such a light bulb for me, and I really it was fascinating. And as soon as I saw that, it seemed so obvious. But that's a fun one to look into just as a concept, right? And I definitely think people should have a quick look because it implies that culture, in fact, influences the functioning of like brain function, right? The assumptions we made about how the human brain works is actually influenced by culture.
It does, and what's helping me here now in India is just how analytical,
Mm.
I've been raised, and here things are kind of more, I don't know, people don't want to, it's like people don't want to break things down to solve a problem. They're like, no, let's not break it down. Let's solve it all at once. I'm like, how are we going to solve it if we don't break it down? And so that was a component of weird as well that's helping me kind of reduce my culture shock here in India.
Is it
As you're
possible
going, I
to
just want to make one quick comment. Sorry, as you're going, I want everyone to hear this. Uh, the IDI is something that's only offered by qualified administrators of the IDI. As it happens, Summer and I are QAs. I think there's other QAs here. I just wanted to mention, I personally would be happy to do the IDI with you. I'll just send you the assessment for free, do a debrief with you, let you see what it looks like to use it, what clients would you experience if you were using the IDI with them. I'd be happy to do that just as an extension of the conversation. And Summer said she'd be happy to do that as well. Please reach out to us. If you know other QAs, a lot of QAs will do this, but I'm happy to do that one-on-one with you. Send you that. It would just be free and at your own leisure. So if you'd like to experience it directly, please let me know, and I'll hook you up. And Summer can do a few of them too. But
I'll drop
sorry,
my
Kirchko, you
LinkedIn
still have
into
your hand
the
raised?
chat.
Oh, sorry, Summer. What?
I said I'll drop my LinkedIn into the chat here in just a minute.
Yeah, awesome.
I have
Thank
a
you so
quick
much.
question. The
Yeah.
one we're discussing with Alex, is it possible to get the link or something in the chat, please? About what Alex was talking
About weird.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, Peter, if you're still on, is that something you could access a link to really fast? Or is that
There's a
something we might
great
be able to
if I can
share
find
next
it,
time?
there's a really good podcast about it.
Yeah.
I'll see if I can find that while people are still on here.
or what it's called, so we can Google it.
I put that in the sorry, Kuchika, I'll do it again. I put that in the chat, but it kind of disappeared because it was like part of a reply to somebody. But yeah, I'll put in something about weird in the chat.
I got you, Nick.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Yes. The Weirdest People in the World is the title of a podcast. And maybe also the book. There's a book out there. There's some good information. It's and I think honestly, if you Google it with that little bit of context, it'll come up.
Okay, thank you.
All right. In the you would find our contact information in the email where you got the link to today's chat. In that place, you would also find an invitation to the LinkedIn group. I noticed a couple of people use that link, I think just today, to request to be part of the Interchange Institute Culture Chat LinkedIn group. You're welcome, invited to join that. Just wanted to say it's one other way to stay connected, informed, and make connections across this whole community. So, yeah, thank you so much for that rich conversation. I've got a couple things to go work on. I've already gotten a couple of DMs. Thank you. I'll be reaching out to those people who've DM'd me with their email addresses to talk about the IDI and other stuff. Please do reach out to us on LinkedIn. Please do consider a topic you'd like to present and share and lead a conversation on. Thank you.
And if you just found someone and met someone here, reach out to them. That's what happened with Nick. He made one remark in the chat, and I was like, I think I need to talk to you. It can probably be as simple as that, and you never know what'll happen.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Be well.
Good to
Take
see
care.
you. Thanks for
I
being
really
here.
enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
In a
Have a good
couple of
day.
weeks.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Alex, send me an email, please.
Thank you.
Thanks much.